Okay. Well, hopefully, Dr. Collins will come on. Um, but I guess I'll go ahead and start. Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome everyone to the inaugural podcast of Reparations Saturdays. This Reparations Saturday podcast is being sponsored by the High Point NAACP and is being brought to us by the friendly folks over at Flex the Vote. So we want to welcome everyone here. My name is Rob Sims. I will be today's co-host, and I will actually go around the room. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves because everyone here is in some shape, form, or fashion involved with this Reparation Saturday. So I will begin with my co-host, Miss Constance Reynolds.
Hello, hello. My name is Constance Reynolds. I am very happy to be here. I'm a part of the communications committee of the High Point chapter of the NAACP, and I am very passionate about reparations. It is a cause that I feel is worthy of my time and attention. So I'm happy to be here today.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Jason Hicks.
Good morning. I am Jason Hicks. I am also part of the communications committee with the High Point NAACP, involved in a lot of other things within the city. But I'm here this morning for Reparations Saturday because reparations are important, and I want to be involved in whatever capacity I can be, if nothing, the conversation of righting the wrong that's been done to Black people and marginalized people within the city of High Point. So I look forward to this conversation this morning.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Miss Wilson, Miss Alston Wilson.
Yes, hi. My name is Courtney Alston Wilson. I hear everyone saying they're a part of another committee, the communications committee. And please forgive me, Ken. I think I'm a part of the communications committee for the NAACP.
You certainly are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's why I started with please forgive me, Ken. But yes, I am a part of the communications committee, would like to be more involved, have a lot of things going on as well with my own business, and just wonderful, just glad to be here this morning. Just came out of the Parliament meeting with the NAACP, jumped into this one just now. So it's all about the NAACP this morning and all the things that they can teach us and we learn from them, but just grateful to be a part of it, and definitely are deeply rooted. I'm a 6th generation farmer here in Randolph County. My parents are from High Point as well, and just deeply rooted in the equity and the getting to the exclusion of Blacks in America, and definitely wanting us to be able to receive our reparations within the next 365 days.
Wow.
Seeing some form of action being taken from the United States government, even if we have to take action to sue the United States government through the United Nations, which I think we should be doing.
All right. Thank you, Miss Alston Wilson. That was good. Next, we have Mr. Thomas Scott.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Thomas Scott. I am one of the co-founders, actually, of the Flex the Vote initiative, along with Ken Watts. I'm also a part of the communications committee for the NAACP. And I've got involved in this particular campaign because I wanted to actually be a part of the needed change that's going to happen as far as economic redress toward the descendants of slaves. I feel that it is we're at a pinnacle right now where this is pretty much going to be the make or break point for us as a group in this particular country right now, because everything's being run off a generational wealth. And Black people, because we've been shut out of the economy for the last 150 years, excuse me. You know, this is do or die for us right now. So I want to do my part.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas. And then last but not least, Mr. Ken Watts.
Good evening. Well, good morning. So I am also a member and chair of the communications committee at the NAACP. And I am definitely happy to be here having this conversation this morning because I believe the time is right and we're going to blow the lid off of this thing. And the lack of economic access for Black people, I believe, is an extinction level event. And we're here to rectify it.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I am glad to be here with all of you. I think we're in a very historic moment where we, here in High Point of all places, we have a chance at reparations. We know the many injustices, the racial discrimination that has been put upon the Native Black Americans here in this country. And so, you know, what we want to do today is we want to touch on that topic. Like I said, along with my co-host, we want to bring some attention to a situation that's been ongoing, and even now with the reparations we have here in High Point, which is something that's happening today. I will just give you a brief history. On September the 20th, 2021, the High Point NAACP brought to the High Point City Council a resolution on reparations. This resolution looks at creating a commission that will look at the effects of reparations and whatever results come out of that, looking at some sort of restoration, whether that be in a compensation form, whether that be an apology, but something that the citizens of High Point want to see the city of High Point make good for its Native Black citizens. And so, I mean, I just want to kind of open up the floor because right now, I think the biggest question is, and for the people that are listening, what are reparations? What does that mean to the city of High Point? And, what could it do for High Point? And I'll open the floor to anyone who wants to start.
We want to start with reparations at the definition of reparations and the definition of a debt that is owed.
That would be great.
That and going back in history for over 350 years of enslavement and free labor, to Jim Crow and to all the exclusions of Native Blacks in America up into current day. So when Robert, I heard you say an apology, it's a little too late for an apology, and that's something that definitely can be done, but it's time to, when people say cut the check, it's time to stop the bullshit and to really recognize us as a group of people and to recognize our worth and our equity here in America and all the things that we've contributed to, our ancestors have contributed to. And just going back as far as the patents that we weren't allowed, that the intellectual properties that were stolen, that the lands that were built, that the roads that were built, that the institutions that were built, that the industries that were built, that the educations that were built, taken from our ancestors to create the civilization that they've created here. Those are key things in the debt that is owed. The exclusion that we have current day, even in High Point can't even pay enough. They don't have enough. Even with the exclusion of the furniture market, we can look at key businesses in High Point that we're excluded from totally, except for our sweat equity. We need to really address High Point, but we really need to take it a step further. And as we're in these spaces, in these small spaces with the small numbers of our population of in our community of people being involved, you know, a lot of us don't even believe that we are owed anything. They say we don't need to continue to say what has happened in the past and to bring up slavery, but it is our point of origin. It is not our point of our beginning as a group of people, but it is our point of origin as Blacks in America. And I think that's where we could start the conversations of, you know, what exactly does it look like? What is the debt? And it's not a anger at this point. It's just a matter of fact. We know it needs to be done. And as Biden spoke this week about the 365 days and Clyburn defending him, we need not defend any longer. Republicans, Democrats, no one is for us. And we need to look at that seriously and take a really good look at what are our points of knowing and the things that we are learning. Just like this morning, we were in Robert's rules of order. Who is Robert and what are the rules of order? And again, is it colonization rules of order that we continue to follow? And when are we going to step out and be our own group of people and create our own identity and step away from the master?
Wow. I like that one. I like that one. Man, anybody, any comment? Because I know that was a history lesson. If you guys listen to what she just put out there, she brought us from the birth of a nation to where we are today. And that birth of a nation came on the backs of the slaves they brought into this country to do that exact thing. You know, I know you had mentioned something about exclusion and equity. Can you go a little more deeper into what that means in terms of how impactful that is with, you know, how this country was built and more so how we were an integral part of that?
When we speak of exclusion, we speak of today's United States agriculture land is owned 98.9% of whites and 0.5% for Blacks. That's exclusion. And for people to continue to say, we're going to get a program, we're going to put these in BIPOC, we're not a part of any group but our group. And until we realize that and stop saying, no, we need to bring other people to the table, exclusion, everyone's excluded us and we don't even see it. Every group has excluded us. So until we learn how to come together as our own group individually and be proud to be Black African Americans, be proud to know that we're from the most beautiful continent, largest continent with the most natural resources. We don't even have a concept of that. We have no connection to that. So exclusion, the furniture market, prime example, High Point, North Carolina. Do you know of any Black families that has history, a foundation built upon the furniture market? It's called real estate. Okay, real estate is when you die, it's the real estate that you own. We don't own any real estate. We own nothing. 27262 is mostly owned by whites with Blacks renting the properties, not owning property. So we have to go back to, I asked my family one day, you know, what is the Black family? What Black families are influential and, you know, wealthy in High Point? There is not one. There's not one in Randolph County. There's not one in Guilford County. There's not one in Davidson County. So we need to wake up and say, we're not doing better. You know, as people say in that commission meeting that we were in, you know, we've come a long ways. We've come nowhere except still under white man's thumb. And until we can realize that and recognize that, they look at Nito, look at Peters or whatever that is, all the construction going on in High Point. These people have literally let immigrants come into our country that we built, still excluding us from anything. We own nothing. We own small little mom and pop shops making less than $100,000 in High Point. No one's owning any major corporations, any major industries. We're excluded. We are sweat equity. And until we realize that we are what the ticket is for them, we won't keep giving them their ticket. We will get our ticket.
Nice. Very nice. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but when High Point says, you know, when we were at the commissioners meeting and they said, you know, well, everyone that came to the stand literally were like, we're not asking for a check. We're not asking for a check. It took all of me not to get out of my seat to say, no, we are asking for it. We're not even asking for a check. We're demanding a check. And if you can put all of this money into, you can send out this thing to us. And it was like businesses that were coming to High Point. And it was like High Point was dating these companies to come to High Point. You know, they date them literally. They give them incentives to come. One company only had 23 employees. What's the incentive? You know, and these are all white companies. It was like a dog whistle saying, if you're white, this is the place to come. We will support you in any business that you think of you want to create. We'll support you and give you the money. We'll back you. Now, are they telling Black people that? No. They opened Becky and Mary's back up. Why did it take so long for us to have a soul food restaurant in the first place? Another one. Why did it take so long to be noticed? We're just always waving the flag, tap dancing, putting our shiniest suit on for them to recognize us. We need to stop doing that and recognize and demand, like right now, there's a supply chain. Biden is talking about putting in all of this money into new infrastructures, to expand infrastructures. This is the time that we in these groups need to be talking about the supply chain. How do we take this $44 million individually and start these industries? How do we break into the industry? Who knows if someone that can run a furniture manufacturer? Why are we not talking about that instead of talking about frivolous stuff that we talk about in these? We're not talking about real live things that can change us. We're talking about baby steps. We don't need baby steps. We need to take a bite out of it. If the government is offering money right now for different industries, we need to figure out as a group of people, how do we interact in this and take the money? So we need to be having some more serious conversations, because all the money is going to be gone that they're giving out these billions of dollars, and we're still going to be looking like the Hispanics are going to have taken it, the Asians are going to have taken it, the Pakistanians, I mean, you name them, they're going to take it, and we're not going to get any.
You know, I'm sorry, what you saying something, Thomas?
No, I said that's the whole point. That's how you create buffer classes within a society. I mean, America is built off of a racial hierarchy. It always has. So it's not by accident. Everything she's saying is very much on point, but that's the intent.
And so I guess again, and you know, that's why we're talking reparations today, because everything we just mentioned there was about it was about wealth. It was about, you know, what does it take to be a part of this capitalist system, to be, you know, recognized, to be, you know, given the same chance as anybody else has had in this country. You know, that is one way of looking at reparations. And before we go any further, our guest today has arrived, Dr. Armando Collins. I just wanted to introduce him real quick. He's joined our group today. Dr. Collins comes to us from UNCG, I believe, Dr. Collins?
Yes.
Yes, and the floor is yours, sir.
No, I'm listening. Everything that has been said so far is what I've been saying in a number of different spaces, especially about us in High Point right now. We're quibbling about whether or not white people are going to give us a fair shake, and whether or not we're going to research and study what has been done to Black people rather than actually doing something about it. Like, there's a lot of nitpicky things that are going on that have to happen, but are happening in the ways that they're happening in order to prolong it. You've had 400 years to study this. We all know this. We all know what the dynamics are in play. However, it's also overly ambitious to expect, although I'd like it to happen, that the power structure as it exists in 1 year, or whatever, one little term, whatever these people are promising they're going to do, is going to actually do the thing it is that needs to be done. Right now, we got to, like you said, put the real demand on. What can we do in concrete with the resources we have in this? Understanding this isn't reparations. This is a drop in the bucket toward that. We need to push economics. We need to push education. We need to push healthcare disparities. We also need to push criminal justice reform, as well as land acquisition, business development, as well as job programs. Moreover, we also need to revitalize High Point's public transportation infrastructure so that the people can get to the jobs. The people that are the laboring class, us, are stuck in spaces and places that if you don't have a car, you can't get to. The way the justice system works, talking about criminal justice reform, if you look at a lot of us who are caught up in the system are caught up around vehicles, either your driver's license or some frivolous thing that happened with either your tags went bad, you got caught with them, peddly stuff, which are designed to create a fine system that keeps poor people poorer, paying into a system that they was forced to live in anyways. And we already know, not just as citizens of High Point, but as Black people, with the way America was structured, fundamentally structured as a capitalist society, it has to have an underclass. And America made us the underclass before we even had a choice in it. When this country was started, if you look at the first census, when the United States becomes the United States, 1790, there are 3 categories of American citizen: white, slave, and all other free citizens. 30 years later, those categories get collapsed to free white, free Negro, enslaved. This automatically is saying whether you're free or unfree, y'all as Black people is in this same category. You can be a slave owning Black person for whatever reasons you own slaves. That doesn't mean you have beat the game, because the way the game is structured, you're always at the bottom. A Jay-Z doesn't mean that we won. The game that's not how it's structured. As long as we're dealing in their dollars, in that whole economic structure we're hating at best. We're kind of vassals in a system rigged up against us. So we have to understand that we do need to seize economic and political power, but we also need to do, like you were saying, go past that and put ourselves in the center of our experience. At one point in time, we were dollars. I'll give you Armando and his sister for your boat. We have to create a system of living that goes beyond what they're doing, within what they're doing. Now, I know that's idealism to the max. That's not going to happen concrete. But in 2020, we should not have to, the way High Point is structured, we have to readjust our perspective on how power relationships with government work. The power is the number of the people. 40% of High Point is Black. Black people vote in voting blocks as a voting block. Even if all of us don't do it, biggest block. For instance, the last mayor race, the mayor won by 50 votes. We could have stood in front of Walmart and got 50 votes. Those people, my point is, those people who are sitting in those positions, the way it works, are temporary. But they have us still asking them like they're king sire. We have to genuine inflect or do something to please them in order to even be able to ask about maybe possibly in the future us talking about the thing that really kind of is the problem, sir. We don't have to do that now. Bro,
I like that. I like that.
Every year, we do have to seize the moment. However, every year the federal government has money that is our citizen money that it has to reapportion through the states, through the cities, to the communities. We're not asking you guys for reparations. We're telling you guys, this is High Point's agenda, because High Point is 40% Black, and this is what this citizenship wants. There's no voting block in High Point that's gonna be big enough to stop it. Even white people, because they divided.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Collins, and this is a question we asked earlier. You know, what would reparations look like? You know, how can we in High Point, what can that physically look like? Reparations.
And I'm gonna be clear about this, because what is being proposed right now is a product of the fight for reparations. But nothing that has come or will come from this is reparations. There's nobody there powerful enough to address it. It's so pervasive. However, what can be done with what we have is using that federal money. This is their proposal, using that federal money to address High Point from a realistic perspective.
Now, real quick,
done
who
shit-
would no, who is there? Who is them? Their proposal. Who is them?
I'm glad you said that, because that's another thing we need to parse out.
city-
This is why I'm
Commissioner
being
spoke
so
of that.
This is why I'm being so careful with language. The NAACP presented a proposal for a resolution. What is being enacted is the city's version of a resolution that takes seriously what was said in that original resolution. What they're proposing is to take the powers that they have and weave those ideas into this idea that they already had called One High Point. One High Point is, and it's not fully formed yet what it actually is, but what it has the power to be is a series of programs enacted through the city. This is why I say this is not reparations. They're co-opting the public dissent in order to further their agenda that they were going to do anyway. It was already going to be community programs. However, that's not my argument. If here's where we're at, life is like golf, play the ball from where it landed. Within that, we need to activate ourselves for an ask, a strategic, specific ask. There's this, I wanted to do this, this, and this. And if y'all don't do it, I'm gonna get you out, and I'm gonna put somebody here who will do that, because this is the temperature of High Point, which can and should be activated, because most Black people in High Point feel at least a similar sentiment. However, they don't know how. We have never been able to organize and don't organize around us outside of everybody else's agenda. Black people span the spectrum of the two-party politics system in America.
We are victims to that.
We need to have a by ourselves meeting, or at least an understanding that before we get into that space, this space has to be accounted for in what we're talking about and what we're doing. And this space might move totally different than that space. In both parties, they need that block. They want that block, whether it's the full block or to chip away at. We go in there with no ask, or a clear understanding that my ask is gonna diverge from what you want to do. We have to go in there with that every time. Allyship is important. However, allies, the word ally, that means a strategic partnership. When our interests don't converge, are we still allies? Oh no, we're not. Okay, so I got to go on with my ass from the gate. I can't be sitting there following you, hoping what you're gonna do is gonna get me where I'm gonna go or where I want to go.
So let me ask you this, and I'm asking the group this also because Dr. Collins brought up a very good point, in that the ask has to be from us. I think it's critical when he says that we need, and I'm quoting this, a by ourselves meeting. How can we organize and can reparations be something that can bring us to a point where we see an opportunity to organize, see an opportunity to present that ask, and to really follow up that ask with, okay, this is ours, we want it, and this is how we want it. So I mean, are these things possible? I'm just asking of the group. I mean, how do we fit that into reparations, or
I
if
think
we
we
can?
need to,
Well,
I think we need to get more visual. And when I say more visual, we have these small, I'm gonna say boule people, Negroes, asking for things that don't represent real people. The economic wealth gap stands because there is truly an economic wealth gap. And until we bring Black people together and find a common thread, we're missing it. We're missing it. And until we get billboards, commercials about putting it on blast, the world should see that Black people in America are still treated unfairly. They're truly enslaved, that the prison system is truly the plantation. Until we show that and put it out there, then we're going to be where we are. Until we start finding that common thread with Black people and a census, getting, our sororities and our fraternities out in High Point on the ground, knocking on doors in those zip codes, talking to people, getting a, if you speak to Black families, I don't care if you are a millionaire Black family or you are on food stamps Black family, everyone has a common thread. Everyone has a common thread. And if we can find key questions to ask, commercials to incite people to put some money into it, NAACP, these studies that we're talking about, that's asinine. They know what they've done. They can see what they've done. We're wasting our time. And what we're doing is we're engaging in the foolery with them. We should say, no, we're not going to do a study. We need to stand up for ourselves. We let these people push us around like they're in control. That's
Now
we need
that's
to get more visual with High Point. If we're going to say High Point, we need to start getting visual. We need to start putting out commercials, not just YouTube commercials, but on the news. Like, this is what the standing of Black people are in High Point, North Carolina right now. We need to put it on the paper. We need to make it more visual. We need to get the community talking about it. Because if the community talked about on the front page of the newspaper that this is what Black people are looking like right now, $23,000 or $2,000 per household to $180,000 in a white household, I think people at work would start talking about stuff like that. I think people in the community and people at church would start talking about that. They have got this system. We are of a point of knowing from an oppressor, and we have not moved from that. Everything we know is from that standpoint. We need to step ourselves out of that and think for ourselves at this point. And it's putting them on blast, literally.
now for any of those that don't know, I'm holding up this pamphlet, which I don't think we can see, but if you go to the website, highpointnaacp.org, the studies that Ms. Austin Wilson were talking about are in the resolution for the proposal of reparations. So I just want to point that out. And then I think Dr. Collins had the floor. I do apologize. Dr. Collins.
No. Thank you.
Okay.
You added to my point, to your point, Courtney. Around this issue, we do need to become visible, and we do need to be media savvy. We have access to the technology to do it. We also know that our community is less physical. It's not just it's not just geographically bound. We have to do, this has to be our civil rights vote with reparations, and we need to be as active about reparations as we are about voting. Get out and vote and knocking on doors. We need to go. The NAACP's mission is supposed to be education and advocacy. I would say in this situation, we've been sitting there talking to these white people as if we're advocating. I'm not going to argue that we are, but what we're failing to do is educate ourselves. And our strength is in Black people. The reason the CP, the colored people, wasn't BIPOC. when they originally was talking about the NAACP, colored people meant Negroes, Black people, African Americans. We need to go out and educate ourselves. Our strength is in having them active around this issue. Just it should be in the forefront of every Black person's imagination that reparation isn't something somebody's giving you. White people they didn't let us free. Nobody can give you
Rebellions
freedom.
we had before we got free.
They took it, and we got to a point where we said, no, we have to reorientate ourselves to our position in this society. We're not servants of it. We don't have to ask city government for anything. We tell city government what we want it to do with our monies.
We were somebody before we were slaves, but all we know is slave. Collins, Wilson, Sims, these are our slave, Graham, these are our slave names. These are not our names. I say that, and until people really recognize that, we are the only group of people without a surname. We don't originate back to these places that our names connect us to, that these people, we don't even pay attention to that. And until we really start paying attention to that, we're not.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. I actually did a research on that name, and you're right. I found out where it came from. It didn't come from across the water. That came from this country. Yeah, it was an American name. So, but again, that's the reality that we're in. We're in a country that was formed with a foundation of slavery. That slavery came through in the form of cheap labor that built a nation. And again, this is where reparations is coming from. And I ask another question, because a lot of people will say, well, you guys get over it. You made it. We gave you the vote. I mean, look, you got Jay-Z. Hooray, right? What do you say to those people who will oppose the idea of reparations or whatever that could mean?
Pull out the list of all the zillionaires and billionaires that are white that have no concept. You put a list of Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Tyler Perry beside of that list of thousands and hundreds of thousands of them. It makes you wonder. That's what we need. That's why I say we need visuals. You need to show the list of all the Black famous people with the money then, because once you get that list, that ongoing roster of them and the wealth that they have, please, we need to expose the royal family. We look at them like they're somebody. They actually enslaved us. This same family that we look toward.
Can I add an anecdote that Chris Rock gave some years ago that paints the partition of wealth among whites as opposed to Blacks? And he talked about the neighborhood that he lived in, very exclusive neighborhood in New Jersey, in fact. And I'm pretty much paraphrasing what he said. He said that the Blacks who lived that were his neighbors were people of renown. Like I think he said Mary J. Blige was a neighbor of his. I'm not quite sure, but it was someone that anyone across the United States would recognize. In other words, to have access to this community, you had to be a Black person of very substantial wealth. But his white neighbors were doctors. They were neurosurgeons. They were
no famous people.
Exactly. I'm getting it. I'm actually I'm kind of piggybacking off of what you were explaining, Courtney. But to be more concise, if we take the anecdote that Chris Rock gave, it allows us to understand that these Black people that are put in front of us as examples of progress, they're more or less tools of propagandizing the idea of inclusion in the economic abundance of this country. Black people only have less than 2%, 1/2 of 2% of the wealth in this country, if I'm correct. That hasn't changed since our emancipation from slavery. If you tallied up all the wealth that free Blacks had at that time, it amounted to what we have today. So the needle hasn't moved. And I guess that's, the understanding that if you, as far as wealth, yeah, we do have what, at least over $1 trillion of actual wealth, but it's not generational wealth. It's not accumulated wealth.
And
Whites have,
our 1
yeah.
trillion is how much to theirs, Thomas? They're
I
like
think it's
in the
14. Isn't it? Is Ken is the numbers guy. I think
I think as of this year, I know when Obama left, they moved up to 114 trillion.
let's shame him too. Let's shame him too.
Well,
Yeah.
you don't even want to get me started on Barack Obama.
No. We need not buy
I
another
think
book from him nor Michelle.
I think Barack Obama broke the system. I'm gonna just be honest with you.
I think he was
Like-
white and he they put him in a black suit and they told
Oh,
him
yeah.
there's
Well,
no-
well,
act
wait,
like
wait,
he's
wait,
black.
wait a minute. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, hold
We're
on.
going down a rabbit hole.
Yes,
We're going down a
yeah.
rabbit hole.
let's come back because I think a lot of people voted for Obama the first time. So we're gonna
Who you want
Voted
to
for him a third time.
A lot
There
of
you go,
people
see?
voted for him the second time. Come on,
But
Rob.
hold on, okay, but I mean,
Okay, so
seriously,
bringing
we
it back,
gotta get
ladies and
off-
gentlemen, bringing it
But-
back.
Hold on, guys. Let me just bring it back home here. I put that forth to you because that's how that's how essentially you explain the wealth gap. That the only Black people that have a buy into this actual system are those who've been allowed to by the current power structure to have any substantial wealth. I think Professor Griff said it. He said it succinctly. To be Black in this country, you don't get beyond $30 million in wealth without without sacrificing something of yourself before the altar of white supremacy. You don't do that. You don't get beyond that $30 million bracket.
And
And
let me put one more.
Well,
Let me
well,
put
wait,
one more.
wait.
Since we're talking about numbers, just to put one more point to that. When it comes to the distribution of wealth in Black society, and this is a economic study that was done by Duke, I think in 2018.
Thank you.
It said that in order to be in the upper elite of Black society, the top 5% of wealth holders in Black society, you need 300 and I think it was $350,000 in total net worth. That means if you have equity in your house and a pension, you are the upper elite of Black society. Now, in order to find $300,000 in wealth, you could basically just bump into any random white person.
Exactly.
And if they don't hold it themselves, they're within one phone call away from someone who does. And that's money to bail you out. That's money to pay for college. That's money when you can't afford rent. That's money when, you need an investment in your business. That's money to live in America today. That is getting more and more expensive every year. And like I said, this is an extinction level event. We're gonna get snuffed out.
Okay, so let me just do a brief overview real quick. The question was, what do we say to those who oppose reparations? And I think for what I heard, our retort would be that it's about wealth. It's about the money. You look at our $1 trillion compared to the $114 trillion, and then that's what we're talking about as a fair and equal playing field.
Well, it's
You know?
also it's
And
also
too many.
not
Well, hold on. Before you say that, let me say this too. I think one of the historical problems, this goes back to what Courtney said earlier, is too many of the people doing the asking come from that top 5%. they're too comfortable. That's how you get a line full of Black folks to say, well, we're not asking for a check.
Ooh, that's a different point. Well, Ken, that goes back to we got to get past the Moses mentality of leadership within our culture, or the messianic one ordained person on high who represents all of us, and we all listen to it. It breeds that type of elitism, and it has. You see it in many organizations, even like the NAACP. It's a very small circle of people who are doing decision making and acting as that buffer class that was mentioned earlier. But the point I also wanted to make was that it's not just about accumulation of wealth, it's the intentional subtraction of wealth from the Black community. When we were brought here, we were free labor. Once we were emancipated, we eventually wind up becoming a large unemployed labor pool that's managed through a prison industrial complex that, for some inexplicable reason, has the most prisoners in the world. There's an entire industry around snatching people out of the world and incarcerating them for laws that don't make sense and are not applied evenly across the society. Black people, we know this, are intentionally targeted as suspects and, better yet, victims of the criminal justice system. Those people being pulled out, those millions of people, that's wealth. That's generational impact. Moreover, that prison industry ain't getting smaller. Walmart ain't gonna sell less clothes next year.
No, they're selling more.
For every one Black person that goes to jail, 9 people are employed. The cop, the bailiff, the judge, the lawyers on both sides of the court, the CO, the cook, the probation officer.
And in all of that you said, Dr. Collins, who is the sweat labor, the sweat equity? Who's watching over these people? Black people watching over Black people, just like they did on the plantation. Same concept.
Overseers. But that's that elitism.
And that messes up your mind. That messes up, again, to the house, to the field. It separates and divides. Even in those situations, they're still separated and divided. The warden, who is he? He's normally Black. I mean, same concepts.
But even that's a relatively new phenomenon given the history of white supremacy. Always seeks to modify itself to stay in control. What they've been doing since quote unquote integration is putting Black faces in white places.
That's how the USDA can have a president Black and you still don't see all what you're not getting. That's how they put all these people in these spaces, like you said, and they still mean nothing. That's how you can have a chief of police, but the police still kill Black people. Same concept.
So that when it happens, there's an automatic justification in place. You go put that Black person in front of those cameras saying that the police are right and police authority is normal. Automatically, you've cut off the argument, this is a white on Black crime. But it is. Black people stand in the front of white crimes all the time, meaning they're the ones acting as the agents of white supremacy. That's just a part of our culture. We've always known about it. We have various ways of talking about it, but it's a truism. And right now where we're at, we gotta pay attention to that, especially with this reparations issue, because it's a divisive issue among us.
And it can definitely hurt us.
Hold on. I am Dr. Amon. I think Dr. Collins can. I'd like you to elaborate on the tool of meritorious manumission, because a lot of what you talk about is rooted in that mechanism that was put in place during slavery as a way to reward Black people for undermining their own group.
Yes, I mean, who's not going? Every human being has a natural propensity for
Right, but how
self-preservation.
about meritorious manumission in relation to us as descendants of slaves, how that plays out through the present day? Because I think when you look at the issue of us getting reparations, making reparations an agenda for us in this community, I think you see that meritorious manumission rearing its head.
But I would think that's because there are certain people who feel that they do and maybe even actually do benefit from the way the structure is. They feel that buffer class system, talk through me, works to their best advantage and aren't seeking anything that looks any more equal or equitable than what already exists.
Like South Carolina Clyburn, he's dangerous for us. Tim Scott, people like that are just dangerous for us.
Jim Crow
Constant has something to say.
yeah.
Clarence Thomas been on the bench for 30 years. I mean, and that shows you that black faces and white spaces don't necessarily mean nothing. Or better yet, it does mean something, but it doesn't mean anything in reference to the liberation of the larger black community. They're there as gatekeepers to reinforce white supremacy. Frederick Douglass said it, power concedes nothing without a demand. They're there to make sure the demand never comes. Or at least that's how they play their role, or people like them play their role. And yeah, it's dangerous.
So, and guys, this is great conversation. I think this goes to what the reasons that, we're actually talking about reparations. We have historical discrimination and racism. And so, and I'm loving the conversation. I want to continue it, but I want to ask another question I want to pose to the group. Just looking at the history of what reparations means, because all of these things we just talked about are examples on why we need reparations. And I'm going to ask the group here today, and I would like for everyone to answer, but do we need reparations?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
It's our only way to move forward in existence.
Go ahead. Okay. We need reparations, and I'm thinking in terms of the city of High Point, right? Because we all know that High Point is historically a Quaker town. Okay, we know that it was founded shortly before the ending of the Civil War. So some might argue that slavery is not a huge part of High Point's history. But the reality is Black people were forever branded in America because of slavery. And so then we also have to take into account, a lot of people like to gloss over Reconstruction when we have these conversations. So let's be clear, just because the Civil War ended and the Emancipation Proclamation happened, we know that the South did not say, okay, well, just turn them over, we lost. The attitude was very different, kind of like over our dead bodies. I mean, so we have to look at the policies that replaced the law of the land. It was slavery, then it had to be something else in order to preserve the lifestyle that slave owners and their families enjoyed and wanted to continue to enjoy around here. I think that we have to unite as a people and agree on who we are, what we stand on, and what we deserve. And I think that it's important that we spend as much time articulating, our grievances, that we spend that same amount of time and energy unifying our own people. We cannot depend on another class or another race or anyone outside of the Black citizens of High Point. That's our job, to stand together and to unify and to use that collective voice to actually look like that 40%. So do we need reparations? Absolutely. Because whether our history traces directly back to a historic white High Point family member owning a historic, Black family member is irrelevant to the fact that our people were branded And we've been dealing with the ramifications of that ever since. But I do believe that it is our responsibility to make this a big deal within our community first, so that we can amplify this message to the masses. And so that's my opinion. And I want to, on top of that, pose the question to the group: how do we do that? What steps can we take to unify our community on who we are, who we believe we are, and what we believe we deserve? I think we have to do that before we can all demand anything.
I'd like to address that somewhat. There's a saying from a gentleman by the name of Jason Black. He described racism succinctly as a group sport. And to take that even further, groups move toward a goal when you have two opposing sides. And white supremacy definitely creates a paradigm where there are two opposing sides. Every group is solidified, one group is solidified behind the goal of domination. There's an agenda. In other words, there's an agenda whose ultimate end is that of dominating the field. Black people, we don't understand that as racism is a group sport, Black empowerment must be a group sport. We have to identify those things that empower us. That is wealth, power, and influence. Controlling the board. Someone made a statement about the messianic leadership that has defined Black politics over the last, I guess, 60 years. Well, we can flip that on its head and say that we don't need leadership in the Black community. We need an agenda. An agenda that identifies those things that empower us as a group. Anything that does not allow us to aggregate wealth, influence, and power in this society is superfluous. Not worth our time. Black people need to solidify behind the agenda and let the agenda lead. Not one personality. Not these current personality cults that we had that have defined Black politics for the last 60 years. That's my point.
Does anybody know who white people's leader is? Since the Black people got one, who white people's leader?
That's my point, Courtney. Let me say this.
It ain't Jay-Z, Kanye. It ain't none of them. They always got
Courtney.
LeBron.
Courtney, that's exactly my point. We got Donald Trump out of office, put Joe Biden in, but he's continuing the policies of Donald Trump.
And
don't have
the
a
last
leader.
44 before him continued the policy.
Precisely because they understand there's an agenda. And that agenda is total domination in all areas of human life.
I got a good question for all of us in the room then. How do we hold the group that we're in, since they've been established since 1960s, and they are the National Association for the Advancement, keyword, advancement of colored people? How do we hold this group accountable? Because in a lot of ways, what have they done? And what are they doing?
Well, that sounds like a great question for next week. But it is 12 o'clock, so we got to wrap this one up.
Thank you very much.
On that one.
Thank
We're
you
gonna leave
very
on a
much.
cliffhanger this week, folks.
I think what's happening as far as how the Black community views that the organization in question at large is that they've gone from just holding them accountable to just taking them out of the conversation. Because if you look at the reparations movement only started at the grassroots level. It wasn't mainstream black, the personalities of mainstream black media that advanced the narrative, that advanced the dialogue. It wasn't our black politicians. It was grassroots. It was people at the grassroots, social media primarily, that moved us to where we are now. Cut the check. That slogan did not originate with the black mainstream or the black elite. It came from the grassroots. And what's happening is that now, to be relevant, and sad to say, they're co-opting the language of the grassroots, but not presenting anything substantive. But I think what's happening is that the NAACP, they've just simply been removed from the conversation.
I don't know how you can be removed from a conversation if it's to advance the colored people.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is that the people that the grassroots, the people that are actually moving the conversation, they don't see that they view the organizations like the Urban League, the NAACP, they view them as relics. They have no bearing on the conversation because of what you just described. They've done nothing to advance
Their lack of presence, their lack of action.
They don't have a presence. So
ladies and gentlemen, let me interrupt again because we have been called for time. I do appreciate everyone's participation today because we've had some great conversation today. I do want to put a pin in that last question about what the NAACP can do. I think that it's something that we can think about and bring back to this group because let's keep in mind that it was the NAACP that brought this resolution to the city of High Point. So, we can interchange those terms, grassroots, NAACP, and to a large extent, there's a lot of organizations that are out of touch. So, I mean, this is not nothing that's uncommon. But to the point of Ms. Austin Wilson, what can we do to hold the NAACP accountable? They've started this. And I think it's great. Like I said, it's an historic moment in High Point that we're even talking about this. And I want everyone, if they could, go to the website for the High Point NAACP. The request is on the website. And, ask your friends, tell them to look at it. And these kind of ideas we need to bring to the NAACP of High Point specifically. Hey, guys, appreciate what you've done. Now, what can we do to move this forward? This is what we need you to do. And then ask, what can we do? And everyone needs to, come to that. And I'm coining a phrase, a by ourselves meeting. We need to have that foundation, I believe, in order for us to go in as a group, as a unit, so that we can get the things we do deserve. And so, again, I appreciate everyone who came out today. Dr. Collins, Ms. Austin Wilson, my co-host Constance, who's looking, ravishing as always today. She cut out on us for 20 minutes, but she's going to come back and lead the conversation next week. Mr. Scott, Mr. Watts, Mr. Hicks, and Mr. Graham. We weren't able to get any phone calls in today, but we're going to try to expand this, and we want to make this an every week or every 2 week endeavor. Everyone here will get links to get to the meeting. And I want to point out there is a meeting of the High Point City Council that's scheduled, I think, for next month where this issue will be on the agenda. So, if everyone can be present for that, I know it'd be great to have some solidarity, at least from the Native Black Americans here in High Point, that, we can lend some support to this reparations. And again, great conversation today, guys. And I think everyone here, I hope to see you next week. And you guys have a great day and a great weekend.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Oh, don't leave. Hold on. Okay. No, we got a lot to discuss. A whole lot to discuss. Hold on.